After Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, sanctions and restrictions against the sports industry of Russia and Belarus began almost immediately, from the termination of cooperation with the Russian market for sports companies that produce clothing to the suspension of national teams and inadmissibility to the Paralympic Games. However, this year, Russian and Belarusian athletes, although not under the flags of their countries, have been allowed to participate in international competitions. And while they are competing, signing advertising contracts with global brands, they have to hold their tongues about their political position, including the war in Ukraine. But staying silent for 2 weeks is not an algorithm that helps to get rid of a harmful pro-Russian vision. Therefore, in our new video we decided to find out what political positions Russian and Belarusian athletes are hiding behind political silence for 2 weeks and how much their taxes bring to Russia. New Shaheds, who bomb peaceful Ukrainian cities. How Russians make money for the war by playing tennis. The Wimbledon Championships is one of the most prestigious tennis tournaments in the world. It is held annually in London, UK. It is held on the grass courts of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club. It is one of the 4 Grand Slam tournaments along with the Australian Open, French Open, and US Open. Wimbledon has a long history and an elegant style. For example, there is a tradition of drinking tea and eating strawberry desserts called Wimbledon strawberries and cream, in addition to the fact that outstanding tennis players have the opportunity to perform on the main court in front of thousands of spectators. Last year, Russian tennis players were not allowed to participate in the Wimbledon Championships. However, now they have the opportunity to earn a part of the record-breaking prize pool of £44,700,000, almost $57 million. The Russians were given 3 conditions: 1. To remain neutral, 2. Not to express support for Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 3. Not to receive financial rewards from the state apparatuses of Russia and Belarus. It seems that for the sake of such earnings, it is not difficult for Russians to do this. Moreover, it is only for 2 weeks. These criteria themselves raise questions. Among all the Russian and Belarusian tennis players, there is only one person, we will reveal his name later, who openly supported the Russian invasion. The rest of the Russian athletes are like fish that easily slip away when you ask specific questions. That it should be noted that out of 199 players, 61 tennis players, 30%, participated in competitions in Russia. 39 athletes were neutral about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. 80 athletes, 40%, are still members of the Russian Tennis Federation, whose board of trustees includes sanctioned persons. They will also be discussed in this article. Most of these tennis players were either neutral or ignored the fact that Russia had begun a full-scale invasion, not mentioning it publicly to their audience. Why is this important? The silence of Russian and Belarusian athletes about the war obviously makes a positive impression on global brands, which pay millions in fees for a successful Russian tennis player to post a photo of himself with a Rolex on Instagram or compete in Nike or Lacoste branded uniforms. From these millions of dollars in fees, athletes pay taxes to the treasury of the Russian Federation or Belarus. And with these taxes, Russia buys weapons that kill Ukrainians. Now let's calculate the earnings of tennis players from Russia and Belarus. This is what we have from open source data: $10.4 million, earned by the top 10 tennis players in Russia and Belarus since the beginning of 2023. $920,000, taxes paid by the Russian Tennis Federation in 2021, $897,000, taxes and fees paid by VTB Kremlin Cup and Kremlin Cup JSC in 2021. It can be calculated that for this $920,000, Russians will be able to buy from 46 to 18 Shahed UAVs. Top 8 tennis players of Russia and Belarus and their earnings since the beginning of 2023. Among those presented are those competing in this year's Wimbledon Championships. Now, let's learn more about the Russian and Belarusian participants of this year's Wimbledon.
Oh, I haven't told you about my 2021 preseason yet. I did it in Kiev. Everyone says, no one infringes on the Russian language in Ukraine and everyone speaks Russian. You go to a store. People are stupidly forbidden to speak Russian, but if you ask, about 30% will quietly answer you in Russian. It's not because people don't want to, but because they are afraid.
These are the words of one of the most prominent Russian tennis players, Anastasia Hasanova. And yes, she was admitted to the Wimbledon championships this year. By the way, this type of sports competition means financial rewards, signing advertising contracts with leading global brands, and spreading publicity. Hasanova Anastasia, born on May 15, 1999, was born in Saratov. She lives there in between competitions and training. Since the beginning of her tennis career in 2014, she has earned $402,690. This is the prize money from tennis competitions. But it's not so much the outstanding victory or the successful tournament that made this athlete's name as her outspoken propaganda statements about Ukraine. In her morbid publications, she said that the trade union building in Odessa was set on fire by pro-Ukrainian activists, the Russian language was banned at the state level in Ukraine, and the Azov forces allegedly seized power. Hasanova also complains that after 2014, living and training in Ukraine became uncomfortable and not like home. She had to leave because, for some reason, people began to treat her badly when she wore a uniform with the Russian tricolor. In 2021, Hasanova was allowed back into Ukraine. And here she again does not like the fact that everyone in public institutions in Ukraine speaks Ukrainian. Svetlana Hasanova, the mother of this tennis player, sits in an extraordinary network of political connections. According to insiders, Hasanova Svetlana was a coach in several state institutions, State Budgetary Institution of Additional Education of the Saratov Region, Sports School of the Olympic Reserve, Olympic Rackets, and NN Ozerov Tennis Academy. Her closest colleagues are politicians. And the director of the Ozerov Tennis Academy is Anton Knyazev, a member of the Ryazan Regional Parliament from the United Russia Party. As we can see, Hasanova has close ties to the political elite. Hasanova is also a co-founder of the Saratov Regional Public Physical Culture and Sports Organization, Saratov Region Tennis Federation. Pavel Bolshatinov, a former United Russia deputy, is working with her.
I've always said I'm in favor of world peace. And that's Ali can say. Would you like to see the situation in Ukraine be resolved? I've already given my answer. I'm for peace. And I will continue to give that answer. I really think that's the answer to your question.
This is a statement by Daniil Medvedev, another Russian tennis player who is participating in the Wimbledon championships this year. Medvedev Daniil Sergeyevich, born on February 11, 1996, was born in Moscow, but currently resides in Monte Carlo, Monaco. During his professional tennis career, which began in 2014, he earned $28,611,469 and $2,011,087 only since the beginning of 2023. As you can see, Daniel declares his desire for peace, but at the same time avoids the topic of war. He didn't even dare to speak about special military operation, as is common in Russia. His position looks more like powerless manipulation. It is possible that Daniil is simply afraid of losing his many contacts with the brand or being forced to leave Monaco. But Medvedev had significant ties to Russian business and government. In 2019, Medvedev signed a sponsorship contract with the odious Tinkoff Bank. This played a key role in his wealth. In 2021, his income from the bank amounted to $305,000. In May 2023, no bank-related activity was detected. In April 2023, Medvedev said that he had abandoned his sponsors from Russia. However, we have not found any actual evidence of this. His statements in the media have now become a rare occurrence. Perhaps this is just a change of strategy or an attempt to avert our eyes from the real situation. The cooperation with influential Western brands is probably also what really makes this athlete keep his mouth shut. His neutrality is rather forced, because it is beneficial for Medvedev to keep his mouth shut in order to continue working with Lacoste, Bovet, BMW, HyperX and other global brands, receiving thousands of dollars in fees. Belarusian tennis player Arina Sabalenko says she is not a Russian athlete and has done nothing wrong to Ukraine. But she hasn't done anything good for Ukraine either. She just keeps silent about the war, meets with a pro-Russian hockey player and whines that she is tired of shouting about it, on every corner. Arina Sabalenko was born in Minsk and lives there. During her professional career since 2015, she has managed to make $15,108,491 in tournament winnings and $2,933,581 since the beginning of 2023. Arina is a favorite athlete of the self-proclaimed president of Belarus. Lukashenko cannot contain his feelings and often comments on the athlete's performances. For a long time, their relationship was in harmony. In 2018, Arina asked for a meeting with the Belarusian dictator, who congratulated her on her sporting success. After winning the WTA 1000 tournament in Madrid, the self-proclaimed president congratulated the tennis player again in person. In 2019, Sabalenko said that Lukashenko was a member of her team. But then everything changed dramatically. In April 2023, the tennis player said that she did not care about Lukashenko's comments and had nothing to do with politics at all. And especially Russian sports. The Russian Tennis Federation, RTF, is an extensive network of connections between politics, business and sports. For example, Vladimir Dmitriev is the chairman of the board of trustees of the RTF. The people in this board of trustees receive the profits and have the power and influence of this institution in their hands. This man is also a member of the board of directors of Gazprom Bank, which is known for its ties to the Russian military. The Russian military is paid salaries through this bank. So, sports still out of politics? Konstantin Zachelin, a member of the FTF Board of Trustees, is in a close second. He is a member of the United Russia Party. He is also a special representative of the State Duma on Migration and Citizenship, first deputy chairman of the Committee on CIS Affairs. In other words, a person who is deeply immersed in Russian politics. He is subject to sanctions. Konstantin Zachelin, member of the Board of Trustees of the FTF, organizer of the Z competitions in July 2022, a tennis competition called Big Helmet, We Don't Abandon Our Own, took place in Russian-occupied Crimea. This event was organized by the same Konstantin Zachelin. All the sports uniforms and banners of the event featured the capital letter Z. Among the sponsors of the Bezkazirki tournament were companies associated with the Russian military and the occupation authorities of Crimea, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, the occupation leadership of Crimea, and the Russian companies Rostec and Rosoboronexport. It turns out that all Russian tennis is closely tied to the financing and direct support of the armed aggression against Ukraine. Russian tennis players play at the Wimbledon championships, batting rackets, and meanwhile, Shaheds and calibers are flying into the homes of Ukrainians. 250 Ukrainian athletes were killed during the Russian full-scale invasion. Ukrainian athletes will not shake hands with Russians and Belarusians at competitions to protest their tacit consent to war. The fact that Russian athletes have not been excluded from international sports competitions this year is a source of justifiable discontent. Now these Russian tennis players, as well as Russian and Belarusian athletes in general, posted a photo and cropped the Belarusian athlete Arina Sabalenko in a joint photo. Apparently, the tennis legend did not want to see little Russians in her feed. Ukrainian athletes, on the other hand, do not always have the opportunity to compete in international arenas and represent their country. There are 3,000 athletes serving in the Ukrainian army today, according to the Ministry of Youth and Sports of Ukraine. Some of the Ukrainian athletes gave their lives defending Ukraine. According to him, 250 athletes and coaches were killed. 16 athletes were injured in the hostilities, and 28 are in captivity. 6 people are considered missing. On this photo, Kirilo Vasilkishin, a Ukrainian tennis coach who was killed near Bakhmut this year. Former Ukrainian number 1 tennis player Alexander Dolgopolov confirmed the death of Kirilo Vasilkishin, a tennis coach, and expressed his condolences to the family. While the Ukrainian sports community is suffering such terrible losses, Russian athletes are silent. They do not consider themselves guilty, they are for a measure in a measure, and for everything good. Some even openly support Russian armed aggression. If you think that these people are forever barred from entering the civilized world, you are wrong, because you have a chance to see them at the most prestigious competitions in the world.